The sky had been a forgotten thing in Noctis for nearly 4 centuries, beneath the poisoned atmosphere. The last bastion of humanity thrived in an elaborate network of underground tunnels, chambers, and artificially lit biodomes. The blue-violet glow of synthetic lights had replaced the sun, and the whisper of air recyclers had replaced the wind. This was home, the only home anyone alive had ever known. Arya Voss stood before the memorial wall, her slender fingers tracing the names etched into the polished obsidian surface. Names of the old world. Names of those who had seen the real sky, breathed genuine air, felt natural warmth on their skin. The wall stretched impossibly high, disappearing into the shadows of the cathedral-like chamber. It was one of the few places in Noctis where silence was mandatory and respected, unlike everyone else. Arya remembered, not from experience, she was only 23, but from dreams. The sensation of rain falling on upturned faces, the scent of soil after a thunderstorm, the way sunlight filtered through forest canopies, dappling the ground with golden patterns. These weren't her memories, not originally. They belonged to humanity's collective past, preserved in the neural pathways of the last dreamers. And Arya was the final one. "Remembering won't bring it back," came a voice behind her. Arya didn't turn. "That's not why I do it." Selene Morales stepped beside her, the memory linguist's dark eyes studying Arya's reflection in the polished stone. At 32. Selene had dedicated her life to decoding the language of memories, translating the symbolism of dreams into practical knowledge. Her olive skin seemed paler than usual under the blue-tinted lights. "The council meeting is in an hour," Selene said quietly. "They're voting on the Dreamcatcher initiative." Arya's hand fell from the wall. "They can't possibly think—" They do. After what happened in Sector 7, they're scared. The Shadow Plague is spreading faster than anyone predicted." The Shadow Plague. Just the name sent a chill through Arya's spine. Not a conventional disease, but something far more insidious. A spiritual virus that hollowed people from within, leaving them conscious, but without will or desire. Empty vessels continuing to exist without truly living. Some said it was the Earth's final revenge against humanity for what they'd done to it. Others claimed it was simply the inevitable result of generations living without sunlight, without dreams, without hope. "How many?" Arya asked. 17 new cases yesterday, 5 the day before. "And they think removing dreamers will stop it. We're the only ones keeping the old memories alive." Selene placed a gentle hand on Arya's shoulder. "That's exactly why they're afraid. The Council believes the memories themselves are the infection vector, that dreaming about what we've lost is driving people into despair." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? When was the last time you had a pleasant dream, Arya?" The question hung between them, unanswered because they both knew the truth. Arya's dreams had grown increasingly dark over the past months, visions of the final days before humanity retreated underground, the wars over dwindling resources, the poison clouds that had made the surface uninhabitable, the screams of those left behind. The soft chime of the city intercom broke the silence. A pleasant, gender-neutral voice announced, "Citizens of Noctis, the air recycling rotation for Sectors 3 through 9 will commence in 15 minutes. Please secure all lightweight items and prepare for temporary pressure changes. Thank you for your cooperation." "We should go," Selene said. "Darius is waiting with the latest climate readings." They made their way through the warren of tunnels that formed the public spaces of Noctis. Unlike the stark, functional corridors of the residential and industrial sectors. The Memorial District featured arched ceilings adorned with holographic murals depicting Earth as it once was. Whether the images were accurate or merely artistic interpretations was a matter of debate among those born underground. Only the dreamers knew for certain, and their numbers had dwindled to just one. The central hub buzzed with activity. Citizens moved with purpose. Their gray and blue uniforms marked with insignias denoting their functions within the community. Scientists, engineers, agriculturalists, educators, all playing their part in humanity's underground existence. Children in training uniforms marched in neat lines between learning sessions, their curious eyes following Arya as she passed. Everyone knew who she was. The last dreamer. Darius Liang waited for them at the entrance to the science wing, his tall frame leaning against the doorway, tablet in hand. As the city's leading climate engineer, he spent his days monitoring the toxic atmosphere above, searching for any sign that the surface might someday be habitable again. At 35, the lines around his eyes suggested he'd seen little progress in that quest. "They've called an emergency vote," he said without preamble. "No public forum, no debate period." "They can't do that," Selene protested. "The charter requires at least 3 days of public input before any major policy change. They're invoking the Emergency Preservation Clause," Darius replied, his voice tight. Claiming imminent threat to the collective, Arya felt her heart rate accelerate. "When?" 20 minutes. "We need to get to the council chamber," Arya said, already moving. They can't vote without hearing from the person their decision affects most. Darius caught her arm. "Arya, wait! There's something else!" He glanced around and lowered his voice. "I've received reports from my sensors in the abandoned eastern tunnels. There's movement on the surface." "Human?" Selene asked, incredulous. "Unknown. But whatever it is, it's disrupting the atmospheric readings. And there's something else. The toxicity levels above the old Tower of Dreams have dropped by 17% since last month." The Tower of Dreams. Once the tallest structure in the now ruined city above them, it had housed the original Dream Hall, the place where humanity's collective memories had been stored before the descent underground. According to legend, the answers to humanity's salvation still lay within its crumbling walls. "We need to tell the council," Arya said. "Tell them what? That we should send an expedition to the surface based on anomalous readings and ancient myths." Darius shook his head. "They'll use it as further evidence that dreamers are dangerous, filling people's heads with false hope." A commotion at the far end of the hub drew their attention. A squadron of security officers in their distinctive red-trimmed uniforms marched purposefully through the crowd, which parted before them like water. "They're coming for you," Selene whispered. "The vote must have already happened." "Impossible," Darius said, checking his tablet. "It's not scheduled for another 18 minutes. Unless they held it earlier, in private." Selene's expression hardened. "We need to get Arya out of here. Now." "Where?" Arya asked, panic rising in her throat. "There's nowhere in Noctis they won't find me." Darius's eyes met hers, and in that moment, Arya knew what he was thinking. The unthinkable. The surface," she breathed. "The old maintenance tunnel behind Laboratory 12 still connects to the emergency exit system," he said. "It hasn't been used in decades, but my access code should still work." "You're talking about sending her outside," Selene hissed. "The atmosphere will kill her in minutes." "Not if she has this." Darius pulled a small metallic case from his bag. Inside was a sleek mask with attached goggles, nothing like the bulky survival suits Noctis kept for emergencies. "Prototype atmospheric filter. I've been working on it for the tower expedition I've been planning. It can't protect your entire body, but it will give you breathable air for about 12 hours. You've been planning an unauthorized surface expedition. Selene stared at him. Later, Arya cut in, taking the mask. Right now, we need to move. The three of them slipped into a service corridor just as the security officers reached the spot where they had been standing. The narrow passage was dimly lit and smelled of machine oil and damp stone. Arya had never been in this part of the city before. Few people had reason to visit the maintenance tunnels that kept Noctis functioning. Laboratory 12 is 2 levels down, Darius explained as they descended a spiral staircase. It was decommissioned after the last Dreamer initiative failed. Failed how? Arya asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Darius hesitated. They tried to artificially stimulate dream states in non-dreamers. The subjects didn't survive the process. A heavy silence fell as they continued their descent. The further they went, the older the infrastructure became. The smooth, polymeric walls of the upper levels gave way to exposed concrete and metal conduits. The air grew cooler, mustier. The city doesn't extend this deep, Selene observed. These tunnels must predate Noctis. They do, Darius confirmed. This was part of the original evacuation network, built during the final years on the surface. Most of it was repurposed or sealed off as Noctis expanded, but some sections were simply forgotten. They reached a massive circular door marked with faded hazard symbols. Darius approached the ancient keypad beside it and entered a long sequence of numbers. "How do you even know this code?" Selene asked. "I found it in the original city schematics. Been planning this expedition for years." He looked at Arya. "I always knew this day might come, that they'd eventually see dreamers as a threat rather than a resource." The door released with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a dark tunnel stretching beyond the reach of their lights. "Whoa. I'm coming with you," Selene said suddenly. "What? No!" Arya protested. "You'll be labeled a traitor." "I already am," Selene replied. "The moment we left the hub with you, we both became fugitives." She looked at Darius. "Do you have another mask?" "Only a partial model. It won't last as long. Maybe 6 hours. I was still refining the filtration system." "Give it to me," Selene insisted. Arya will need a guide who understands the memory language if she's going to find the Dream Hall. Darius hesitated, then nodded. "Take this as well." He handed Selene his tablet. "It has maps of the old city, what's left of it, and my research on the tower." "You're not coming?" Arya asked, suddenly afraid. "Someone has to stay behind to misdirect them." Darius said quietly, "Buy you time. They'll arrest you. Worse. Probably." He managed a small smile. "But they'll be looking for 3 fugitives. Finding only one might confuse them long enough for you to get clear." The sound of distant voices echoed down the corridor behind them. The security officers were closing in. "There's no time," Darius urged. "Go, now. Head east toward the tower. According to my readings, that's where the air is clearing." Selene squeezed his hand. "We'll come back for you." Don't," he said firmly. "Not until you've found what you're looking for." He turned to Arya. "The dreams have always been trying to tell us something. Find out what it is." With that, he pushed them through the doorway and sealed it behind them. The last thing Arya saw was Darius turning to face the approaching officers, his shoulders squared and resolute. Then darkness engulfed them. Selene activated the light on Darius's tablet, illuminating a narrow tunnel that stretched ahead into blackness. The walls were rough-hewn stone, occasionally reinforced with ancient metal beams, now thick with rust. "Put your mask on," Celine instructed, fitting her own partial model over her nose and mouth. "We don't know how far we are from the surface, or what the air quality is like even in these tunnels." Arya secured the mask over her face. The apparatus was lighter than she'd expected, molding to her features like a second skin. The attached goggles gave everything a slight blue tint. "How do we know which way to go?" she asked, her voice slightly muffled. Selene consulted the tablet. "According to this, we follow this tunnel for approximately 2 kilometers. It should lead to an emergency exit point near what used to be the eastern district of the old city." They began walking, their footsteps echoing in the confined space. The tunnel sloped gradually upward, confirming they were indeed heading toward the surface. Neither spoke much, the reality of what they were doing, leaving Noctis, the only home they'd ever known, for a poisoned wasteland, was too overwhelming to put into words. After what seemed like hours, but was probably less than one, they reached another sealed door. This one was heavily reinforced and bore warning signs in 3 different languages. "This is it," Celine said, her voice tight with anxiety. "The surface access point." She entered the code Darius had given them, but nothing happened. The keypad remained dark. No power. Arya realized. These tunnels must have been disconnected from Noctis's grid decades ago. "There should be a manual override," Selena said, running her hands along the door's edge. These systems were designed with fail-safes. After several minutes of searching, they located a recessed lever beneath a rusted panel. Together, they pulled it downward. The mechanism groaned in protest, decades of disuse making itself known. But slowly, inexorably, the massive door began to slide open. A gust of air rushed in, different from the sterile, recycled atmosphere of Noctis. It carried scents Arya had experienced only in dreams: dust, decay, and something else, something alive. As the door opened fully, they found themselves at the bottom of a steep staircase leading up to what appeared to be a collapsed building. Faint, reddish light filtered down through the debris. "Sunset," Selene whispered in awe. "It must be sunset up there." They ascended carefully, picking their way around fallen concrete and twisted metal. At the top, they emerged into the ruins of what had once been a massive transportation hub. The ceiling had long since collapsed, exposing them to the open sky. Arya froze, overwhelmed. The sky was not blue as in her dreams, but a turbulent swirl of russet and amber, with dark clouds scudding across it like bruises. The air, even filtered through her mask, tasted strange, metallic, and somehow ancient. Around them stretched the skeletal remains of the city that had once thrived here, now reduced to crumbling concrete husks and rusted infrastructure, all of it tinged red in the dying light. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Terrible, but beautiful." Selene was consulting the tablet. "The tower should be that way," she said, pointing east where a distant spire was just visible against the darkening sky. "About 7 kilometers. We should get moving before we lose the light completely." They set off through the ruins, keeping to what remained of the old streets. The landscape was alien and yet hauntingly familiar to Arya. She had seen these places in her dreams, not as they were now, but as they had been, bustling with life, gleaming with light and purpose. Now they were tombs, monuments to humanity's failure. As twilight deepened into night, the temperature dropped dramatically. Without the thermal regulation of Noctis, they felt the true cold of the surface world for the first time. The stars emerged, not the artificial constellations projected onto Noctis's cavern ceilings, but real stars, distant and indifferent. We should find shelter," Selene suggested, her breath forming visible clouds despite the mask. Continue in the morning. They found refuge in the remains of a small building that still had most of its roof intact. Inside, protected from the wind, they huddled together for warmth. "Do you think Darius is all right?" Arya asked into the darkness. Selene was silent for a long moment. "I don't know. The council isn't cruel, just afraid. But fear makes people do terrible things. Like sending their last dreamer into exile. Like forgetting that dreams are what make us human." Sleep came fitfully to Arya that night. When dreams finally claimed her, they were more vivid than ever before, as if proximity to the surface, to the places where these memories had been formed, had strengthened her connection to them. She dreamed of the tower as it once was, a gleaming spire of glass and light reaching toward the unblemished sky. She saw people entering it, their faces alight with purpose. In the dream, she followed them into a vast circular chamber at the tower's heart, where thousands of crystalline orbs hung suspended in midair, each containing what looked like a miniature galaxy of swirling lights. The dream hall. She watched as a woman placed her hands on one of the orbs, which brightened at her touch. The woman's face, so like Arya's own, filled with wonder as the lights from the orb seemed to flow into her. Then the dream changed. The sky darkened with poison clouds, sirens wailed, the tower trembled as the earth itself rebelled against what humanity had done to it. People fled in terror, but the woman remained, frantically working the controls of some vast machine connected to the orbs. They must be preserved, the woman was saying. If we lose the dreams, we lose everything that makes us human. Another figure approached her, a man in a white coat with a grim expression. "We have to go, Ava. The last transports are leaving for Noctis." "Not until I finish the transfer." The woman, Eva, didn't look up from her work. "The neural patterns are being encoded into the genetic sequence. It will express as a recessive trait, dormant until needed." "You're talking about altering human DNA. The ethical implications." "Ethics." Eva laughed bitterly. "The world is dying. Victor, humanity is going underground, perhaps forever, without a connection to our past, to what we're fighting to reclaim. What will become of us? We'll adapt to the darkness, forget the light, become something less. The council hasn't approved this. The council doesn't need to know." The man hesitated, then moved to help her. "How will we know if it worked?" "The dreamers will emerge when they're needed most. When humanity faces its darkest hour underground, as we face it now above. They'll remember what we've forgotten. Show us the way back." The dream blurred, accelerated. Arya saw generations pass in the underground city of Noctis, saw the emergence of the first dreamers, decades after the descent, saw how they were first revered, then studied, then feared as the dreams turned dark, reflecting humanity's greatest shame, the destruction of their world. She saw herself, the last of them, and she saw what waited in the tower, not salvation in the form of a habitable world, but something more profound, the truth about what humanity had been, and what it could be again. Arya woke with a gasp, her heart pounding. Beside her, Selena stirred. "What is it? What did you see?" the memory linguist asked, instantly alert. "The dream hall," Arya replied. "I know what it is now, not just a repository of memories, but a seed, a catalyst." "For what?" "For us, for what we could become again." Arya struggled to put the revelation into words. The dreamers weren't an accident. Selene, we were created, genetically engineered to carry humanity's memories through the darkness until it was time to return to the light. Selene stared at her. That would violate every ethical principle of pre-descent science. The Charter explicitly forbids genetic manipulation. They were desperate. They knew that without a connection to what we'd lost, humanity would change, adapt to life underground in ways that might make us forget we ever lived above. Who did this? A woman named Eva. She looked like me. Selene. Understanding dawned in Selene's eyes. Your ancestor. She encoded her own memories into her genetic line. Not just hers, everyone's. The entire collective experience of surface humanity, preserved in recessive genes that would express themselves generations later. Arya stood, suddenly energized despite the cold and their precarious situation. We need to get to the tower. The dream hall is real, and it contains more than just memories. It has the key to restoring what we've lost. They set out at first light, making better time now that they could see the treacherous terrain. The tower grew steadily larger on the horizon, its broken silhouette a dark promise against the strange copper sky. The landscape changed as they approached. The barren rubble gave way to something unexpected, patches of grayish-green growth clinging to the ruins. Not the lush vegetation of Arya's dreams, but life nonetheless, stubbornly reclaiming what had once been solely its domain. Plants, Selene said in wonder, kneeling to examine the pale, lichen-like growth. Darius was right. Something's changing up here. By midday, they had reached the base of the tower, once the pinnacle of human achievement. It now stood fractured and forlorn. Its upper sections collapsed, its once gleaming facade dulled by centuries of acid rain and neglect. Yet it retained a certain grandeur, a defiant dignity in its brokenness. The main entrance was blocked by debris, but they found a side access point where the building's skin had peeled away, revealing the structural framework within. Carefully, they made their way inside. The interior was a maze of collapsed floors and exposed support beams. Dust motes danced in the shafts of copper light that penetrated through holes in the outer shell. They climbed slowly, following the path Arya had seen in her dream, ascending toward what had once been the heart of the tower. On the 37th floor, or what remained of it, they encountered the first sign that they were not alone on the surface. A makeshift camp had been established in what had once been an expansive office space. Bedrolls, crude tools, and the remains of a fire suggested recent occupation. "Surface dwellers?" Selene whispered, incredulous. "That's impossible. Nothing human could survive up here for long." "Unless they found another way to adapt," Arya replied, examining the camp. "Look at this." She held up a mask similar to their own, though much cruder in design. "They're filtering the air, just like us." A noise from the stairwell made them both freeze. Footsteps, multiple sets, ascending rapidly. "Hide," Selene hissed, pulling Arya behind a fallen support beam. They watched as 5 figures entered the space. Unlike the uniformed citizens of Noctis, these people wore patchwork clothing made from scavenged materials. Their faces were obscured by masks similar to the one Arya had found, and goggles protected their eyes from the harsh environment. They moved with a confident familiarity that suggested they knew this ruined world intimately. "The sensors picked up movement heading this way," one of them said, voice muffled by their mask. 2 sets of footprints leading from the old transit station. "Noctis expedition?" another asked. "Unlikely. They never come above ground. Not officially, anyway. Could be Mercer's people. They've been expanding their territory." The name sent a chill through Arya. Mercer Kane, leader of the Shadow Mercies, a faction that had split from Noctis decades ago, believing that humanity's future lay not in reclaiming the surface, but in transcending physical existence altogether through virtual reality and memory manipulation. They were rumored to raid Noctis periodically for technology and test subjects, though most citizens dismissed them as urban legends. Whoever they are, they're heading for the hall. We can't let them reach it before the purification cycle is complete. Arya and Selene exchanged glances. These people knew about the Dream Hall. One of the surface dwellers began a methodical search of the area. It was only a matter of time before they were discovered. Selene made a split-second decision, standing and raising her hands. "We're not your enemies," she called out. The reaction was immediate. All 5 surface dwellers whirled, weapons raised, crude but effective-looking spears, and what appeared to be a retrofitted energy weapon from Noctis's early days. "Step out where we can see you," commanded the apparent leader. "Both of you." Arya joined Selene, hands raised in the universal gesture of surrender. "Noctis citizens," observed one of the surface dwellers, noting their clothing. "What are you doing above ground?" "We're looking for the Dream Hall." Arya replied honestly. "I'm a dreamer, the last one from Noctis." The words had an immediate effect. The surface dwellers lowered their weapons, and their leader stepped forward, removing their mask to reveal the face of a woman perhaps in her 40s. Her skin weathered by exposure to the harsh environment, but her eyes sharp and clear. "A dreamer, from below." She studied Arya intently. "You look like her, like the founder." "Eva," Arya whispered. The woman nodded. "I am Maya, guardian of the Tower Path. And you," she pointed at Arya, "are long awaited." The surface dwellers led them higher into the tower, using pathways that would have been invisible to anyone unfamiliar with the structure's current state. Maya explained as they climbed, "We are the Keepers, descendants of those who refused to go underground. Our ancestors believed that abandoning the surface was surrendering to defeat, that humanity belonged here, in the light, no matter how changed that light had become." "Ah, but how did you survive?" Selene asked. "The atmosphere is toxic." "It was, and in many places still is." Maya acknowledged. "The first generation suffered terribly. Many died. But those who survived adapted, developed filtration techniques, found pockets where the air was clearer, and discovered the Dream Hall," Arya added. Maya gave her a sharp look. "Yes, though we didn't understand its purpose at first. To us, it was simply a place of power, where the veil between past and present seemed thinnest." They had reached what had once been the tower's crown, a vast circular chamber now partially open to the elements. Where one section of the wall had collapsed, they could see the ruined city stretching away below them, bathed in the eerie copper light of the setting sun. At the chamber's center stood a structure that made Arya's breath catch. Just as in her dream, a circular platform surrounded by suspended crystalline orbs, though many were now dark and lifeless. Those that still glowed pulsed with a soft, bluish light that seemed somehow familiar. "The dreaming place," Maya said reverently. "For generations, we've protected it, waiting for the one who could unlock its full potential. We knew they would come from below eventually, the inheritor of Eva's gift." "What does it do?" Selene asked, approaching one of the glowing orbs with professional curiosity. "It remembers," said another voice from the shadows. They turned to see an elderly man emerge from an adjoining chamber. Unlike the others, he wore no mask, though his features showed the same weathered quality as Maya's. "And this is Dr. Santos, our memory keeper." Maya introduced him. He spent his life studying the hall and its mysteries. The old man approached Arya, his eyes alight with wonder. "You are the culmination of Eva's work, the final link, I don't understand, Arya said. What am I supposed to do? Connect, Dr. Santos replied simply. The orbs contain the complete neural patterns of humanity before the descent, not just facts and events, but experiences, emotions, the entire spectrum of what it meant to be human under the open sky. He gestured to the platform. For generations, we keepers have been able to access fragments, enough to maintain our connection to the past. But the full activation requires a dreamer, someone whose brain is already attuned to the patterns through genetic encoding. To what end? Celine asked. What happens when the hall is fully activated? Dr. Santos and Maya exchanged glances. Restoration, the old man said, of the air, the soil, the water, all of it. The hall isn't just a memory repository. It's the control center for a planetary-scale regeneration system. Arya stared at him in disbelief. That's impossible. Nothing could reverse the damage done to the Earth. Not reverse, Maya corrected. Transform. The system doesn't restore the old Earth. It creates a new balance, one that incorporates what humanity did to it rather than erasing it. The process has already begun, Dr. Santos added. Slowly, imperceptibly at first. The patches of growth you must have seen, the gradual clearing of the atmosphere around the tower, these are the preliminary stages, activated by our partial connections to the hall. But full restoration requires a complete neural link. Maya continued. A dreamer to unlock the final sequence. Arya looked at the glowing orbs, feeling the weight of centuries of hope resting upon her shoulders. And if I do this, what happens to me? The silence that followed told her everything. The process requires complete neural integration. Dr. Santos finally said, your consciousness would merge with the hall, become part of its operational matrix. She would cease to exist as an individual. Celine translated, her voice tight with anger. You're asking her to sacrifice herself. I'm asking her to transform, the old man countered, to become something greater, the consciousness that guides Earth's rebirth. Before Arya could respond, a deafening explosion rocked the tower. The floor beneath them trembled, and dust rained down from the ceiling. The shadow mercies, Maya said grimly, retrieving her weapon. They've found us. Who? Celine asked. Mercer Kane and his followers. They want the hall for themselves, not to restore the Earth, but to extract its memory technology for their virtual reality systems. They believe the future lies in leaving physical existence behind entirely. Another explosion, closer this time. The keepers moved with practiced efficiency, taking up defensive positions around the chamber. We can hold them off, Maya told Arya, but not indefinitely. If you're going to do this, it must be now. Arya looked at the platform, then at Celine, torn between duty to humanity's future and fear of what awaited her. There has to be another way, Celine insisted. There isn't, Dr. Santos said gently. The system was designed this way intentionally. Eva believed that only through true sacrifice, through the willingness of one to become many, could humanity redeem itself. The sounds of fighting reached them, energy weapons and the clash of more primitive arms. The keepers were engaging the first wave of shadow mercies. They're after you, Maya told Arya. Somehow they know you're here, what you represent. If they capture you, they'll use your neural patterns to corrupt the hall, turn it to their purpose. Which is? Celine demanded. Transcendence without redemption. Dr. Santos replied. Escape rather than restoration. They would use the hall to upload human consciousness into a permanent virtual state, abandoning the physical world entirely rather than healing it. Another explosion, and part of the chamber's ceiling collapsed, revealing the darkening sky above. Through the gap, Arya could see strange aircraft approaching, sleek, predatory shapes unlike anything produced in Noctis. "Decide," Maya urged. "Now." Arya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of two civilizations, above and below, resting on her decision. She thought of Darius, who had sacrificed himself so she could reach this place, of the citizens of Noctis, living their constrained lives in artificial light, of the surface dwellers, clinging to existence in a poisoned world, of future generations who might never know what it was to feel rain on their faces or see a true sunrise. "I'll do it," she said, opening her eyes. "Arya, no!" Celine grabbed her arm. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way. There never was." Arya smiled sadly. "That's why the dreams led me here. Why I'm the last dreamer. It had to end with me so it could begin again for everyone else." The fighting was getting closer. Through the broken wall, they could see Shadow Mercies advancing up the tower, their sleek black armor a stark contrast to the patchwork gear of the Keepers. "What do I do?" Arya asked Dr. Santos. "Stand on the platform. Place your hands on the central control orb. Your mind will do the rest. It's been prepared for this moment since before you were born." Arya embraced Selene tightly. "Tell Noctis what happened here. Tell them to prepare for the surface. It won't happen overnight. But someday, soon, they'll be able to return." "I will," Selene promised, tears streaming down her face. "Your name will be remembered. Arya, I swear it." Arya stepped onto that platform. The moment her feet touched it, the remaining orbs brightened, their blue glow intensifying until it illuminated the entire chamber. At the center stood a larger orb, pulsing like a heart. As she reached toward it, the first of the Shadow Mercies broke through the Keeper's defensive line. Maya engaged their leader, a tall figure whose elaborate mask completely obscured their features. "Mercer." Dr. Santos identified him. "Go, quickly!" Arya placed her hands on the central orb. Immediately, a sensation unlike anything she had ever experienced flooded through her. It wasn't pain, exactly, but a profound stretching of consciousness, as if her mind were being pulled in thousands of directions at once. She saw, felt, everything. The dreams she had carried all her life exploded outward, no longer confined to her sleeping hours, but fully realized, fully present. She was everywhere at once, in the tower as it had been, gleaming and new, in Noctis, where alarms were sounding as sensors detected massive atmospheric changes, in the ruined city around them, where the first green shoots of true plants were pushing through the poisoned soil with supernatural speed. She was Eva, centuries ago, embedding her knowledge, her hope, her very essence into the genetic code that would eventually produce Arya. She was the first surface dwellers, struggling to survive in a hostile world. She was the citizens of Noctis, looking up at their artificial sky and somehow sensing that change was coming. And she was Arya still, aware of her body standing on the platform even as her consciousness expanded beyond it. Through her expanding awareness, she witnessed the battle raging in the chamber. Maya had engaged Mercer directly, but the Shadow Mercy leader was formidable. With a swift, brutal movement, he knocked Maya aside and advanced toward the platform. "Stop!" Mercer's voice was distorted by his mask, but the command was clear. "You don't understand what you're doing." But Arya understood perfectly now. She saw Mercer's plan, to use the hall not for restoration, but for escape, to upload the consciousness of his followers into a permanent dream state where they would live in an idealized version of the old world, while the real one continued to decay around their empty bodies. The Shadow Plague. Arya suddenly understood its origin, too. It wasn't a natural virus, but the result of Mercer's early experiments with consciousness transfer. imperfect attempts that left his test subjects hollowed out, still physically alive but spiritually vacant. "You're the cause," she said, her voice altered by the energy flowing through her. "You created the plague." Mercer hesitated. An unfortunate side effect of necessary research. Evolution requires sacrifice. "Not this kind." Arya's connection to the orb deepened. She could feel the full weight of human history flowing through her now. The triumphs and failures, the love and loss, the terrible hubris that had destroyed the world, and the indomitable hope that might yet save it. Mercer lunged for her, but his movement seemed impossibly slow to Arya's enhanced perception. With a thought, she redirected a portion of the hall's energy. A barrier of blue light sprang up around the platform, repelling him. "You can't stop what's already begun," she told him. "The restoration is happening. The dream is becoming real." "Dreams are illusions," Mercer spat. "Reality is pain and limitation. I offer transcendence. Without cost, without consequence." Arya shook her head. "That's not transcendence. It's escapism." The connection was nearly complete now. Arya could feel her individual identity beginning to dissolve, merging with the collective consciousness stored in the hall. It wasn't death, not exactly, but a transformation so profound that what emerged would no longer be Arya Voss as she had known herself. With her last moments of individual awareness, she looked at Selene. "Remember," she said, "and tell them to dream again." Then she surrendered to the light. What happened next was witnessed by everyone present, and later recounted by Selene to the citizens of Noctis. The central orb pulsed once, twice, then released a blinding flash that expanded outward in a perfect sphere of blue-white energy. It passed through solid matter as if it weren't there, expanding beyond the tower, beyond the ruined city, encompassing the entire planet in seconds. Where it passed, things changed, not dramatically, not instantly, but fundamentally. The poisoned soil began to neutralize, the toxic air began to clear. And people, shadow mercies and keepers alike, and far below in Noctis, experienced something extraordinary, a shared dream. Not Arya's dream, or Eva's, or any single person's, but humanity's collective dream of what Earth had been and could be again. For a single, synchronous moment, every human being experienced the world as it might be, green, vibrant, alive. They felt sunlight on their skin, breathed clean air, heard birds singing. They understood, on a level beyond words, that restoration was possible, that the path back to the surface would not be swift, but was now, finally, open. When the light faded, the platform stood empty. The orbs had gone dark, their purpose fulfilled. Arya's physical form had vanished, transformed into the energy that now permeated the world, guiding its healing. Mercer Kane, faced with the undeniable reality of what had happened, dropped to his knees. His mask fell away, revealing a face ravaged by the poisons he had exposed himself to in his quest for transcendence. "What have you done?" he whispered. "She showed us the way back." Selene answered, her voice thick with emotion, but also with a new certainty. "The way forward." In the days that followed, the changes accelerated. The atmosphere around the tower cleared enough that masks became unnecessary for short periods. Plant life, real plants, not just the lichen-like growth they had seen before, began to emerge. The first birds were spotted, descendants of those few species that had somehow survived in isolated pockets. Word spread to Noctis. At first, there was disbelief, then cautious expeditions to verify the claims. Darius, who had been imprisoned but not executed thanks to his value as a climate engineer, was released to lead the first official survey team. The data he brought back was irrefutable. The surface was healing. It would take years, perhaps decades, before large-scale habitation would be possible, but for the first time since the descent, there was a path forward, a future that included the sky. In Noctis, children began to dream again, not the prophetic, memory-laden dreams of the dreamers, but ordinary dreams filled with imagination and possibility. It was as if Arya's final act had unlocked something long dormant in the human psyche, the ability to envision a future different from the present. Selena became the chronicler of what had happened, working with the memory linguists of Noctis and the Keepers to document the transformation. The Shadow Mercies, their leader's vision discredited by the tangible results of the restoration, gradually disbanded. Many joined the surface reclamation efforts, finding purpose in physical reality rather than escape from it. A new structure was built atop the tower ruins, not a replacement, but a memorial. They called it the Dreaming Temple, and it became a place of pilgrimage for those seeking connection to the planet's rebirth. And sometimes, in the quiet moments at dawn, when the light first touched the healing land, people would report a strange sensation, a presence, a consciousness that seemed to permeate everything. Not a ghost or a spirit in the traditional sense, but something more integrated, more fundamental. As if the earth itself had awakened and was dreaming alongside them. In time, the first permanent surface settlement was established near the tower. They named it Aurora, for the dawn of a new age. Children grew up under the open sky. Their lungs adapted to the still imperfect but improving air. They played in fields that grew greener with each passing season and told stories of the last dreamer who had given herself to save the world. 10 years after Arya's transformation, Selene stood at the edge of what had once been a barren wasteland, now a meadow bursting with wildflowers. Beside her stood Darius, his hair now streaked with gray, but his eyes bright with vindication. On her other side was Maya, who had become the liaison between the surface dwellers and the people of Noctis. "Do you think she knew?" Darius asked. "What would happen? What she would become?" "I think she hoped," Selene replied, and that was enough. A child's laughter drew their attention. A group of young ones, some from Noctis, some born on the surface, were playing in the meadow, their faces upturned to the sun, their movements unencumbered by fear of the world around them. "She sees them," Maya said with certainty, "not as Arya anymore, but as part of everything. The dreams continue." Selene nodded, feeling a familiar presence in the breeze that stirred her hair, in the sunlight that warmed her face, not gone, just transformed. The last human who could dream had become the dream itself, and in doing so, had given humanity the chance to dream again. As the sun set on the healing world, painting the sky in colors unseen for centuries, the children continued their play, their laughter a promise that the future would be brighter than the past. And somewhere, in the rustle of leaves and the song of returning birds, in the very atoms of the renewing earth, Arya dreamed with them,